This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so we'll come to lying on our backs. And as you come to your back, have your knees bent and soles of the feet on the mat. Take your time to settle. Make any adjustments so that the back body feels fully supported by the ground. Just check that the back of the neck still feels long here, so that the length of the spine continues up the back of the neck into the base of the skull. So maybe the scope for the chin to just draw down a little to help with that. And then see if on your next exhale, you can allow the shoulders to soften and release down into the mat a little more. Maybe having the arms in mountain pose position to facilitate that softening and releasing down of the shoulders. So arms are out at a slight angle from the body, elbow creases facing up towards the ceiling. Feet can be hip width apart, or feet can be alongside each other. Just take a moment here to notice the breath. Just observing the breath in its natural rhythm. Either staying here or on your next exhale, drawing the knees out to the sides, coming to rest on the outer edge of each foot. And then you can bring the soles of the feet to rest gently together. Again, make any adjustments here so that you feel supported, particularly around the lower back. So any discomfort in the lower back, you could see how it feels to take the feet a bit further away from the body. Or you could bring the knees back up and bring soles of the feet to the mat if that feels best for the lower back today. Wherever you are now, bring your attention back to your breath. Again, just observing the breath in its natural rhythm. As you observe the breath, noticing expansion, movement in the front body on the inhale. Noticing softening and release of the body, of the front body on the exhale, a sense of the front body releasing into the back body, maybe a sense of the back body softening and releasing into the mat. And the breath is still in its natural rhythm. You're just using each inhale to prompt you to notice and observe the expansion in the front body. Using each exhale to prompt you to observe softening and release of the front body into the back body into the ground. If it feels comfortable to you, might explore lengthening the inhale and the exhale a little here. So still keeping the breath easeful, but maybe taking a little bit more time over each inhale and exhale to have a sense of more fully exploring that sense of expansion on the inhale, that sense of release and softening on the exhale. You can continue observing the breath in this way, observing expansion, observing release in the body. Or if it feels comfortable for you, you could now bring your focus to the chest, the area that houses the lungs, and all the way up to the collarbone. And as you inhale, bring an awareness to expansion around the chest, around the lungs, all the way up to the collarbone. So maybe a sense of the lungs filling from the bottom all the way up towards the collarbone. As you exhale, again, just noticing that natural softening and release of the front body into the back body into the mat. Continue in this way. So any sense of controlling the breath, if you're lengthening the breath, still allows the breath to feel easeful. Now though, on the inhale, if you're following this practice, you're more fully exploring a sense of expansion across the chest or the whole of the heart space. So from the bottom of the lungs, or we might say the diaphragm, all the way up to the collarbone and from shoulder point to shoulder point, finding that expansion on the inhale. Still observing, finding that softening and release of the front body on the exhale. As you explore this expansion of the front of the heart space, you might visualize the lungs filling from bottom to top all the way up towards the collarbone, or it might feel more helpful to visualize the expansion starting from the center of the chest and radiating out to the sides. So you're having a sense of noticing increased space between the ribs, the upper ribs. Continue with this focus on the front of the heart space on each inhale. And now, if it feels okay, on the exhale, bring your focus more to your belly. So as you exhale, noticing the belly softening and releasing towards the spine. And if it feels comfortable too, you could gently draw navel in towards spine to help with that exhale. So inhaling, finding expansion across the front of the heart space. Exhaling, a sense of that exhale coming from the belly as the belly draws towards the spine. If it feels helpful, you could place one hand on the belly, one hand on the chest. Last few rounds of breath in this way. So as you undertake this practice with the breath, there's a sense of retaining an expansion across the heart space, even when you exhale. You're not holding the breath, you're not tensing or holding anything in, but you're retaining some sense of spaciousness and expansion in the front of the heart space, even as you exhale. Now letting that practice go, gradually allowing your breath to return to its natural rhythm. Continue to observe the breath as it makes that transition. Just being with the breath now in its natural state. If you want to set an intention for your practice today, take a moment to do that now. On your next inhale, draw your knees, if you've got your knees out to the sides, draw your knees back together, bring soles of the feet to the mat. And And then as you next exhale, draw the left foot away from you, slide the left foot away from you so that the left leg is now resting out long on the mat. Push out through the left heel so that you become active through the left leg. So keep the heel in contact with the mat, but find a push through the heel. Maybe it feels helpful to push out through the ball of the foot as well. And we're doing that in order to really engage the leg. So you might imagine that the left sole of the left foot is pushing against the wall, or yeah, pushing against something. As you do that, can you feel the left leg become more active? Can you find a sense here of the left hip actively drawing down into the mat? So it's almost a sense of the hip drawing out and round and down. So if we think about the hip as being a joint that rotates, then the left hip is kind of rotating out to the left and then drawing down into the mat. Maybe you could draw navel in towards spine so that the lower back feels a little more connected with the mat here as well. Stay active through the left leg in this way. And on your next exhale, draw the right knee out to the side, coming to rest on the outer edge of the right foot. So bringing your right leg back into your Baddha konasana. As you do that, keep the left hip drawing down. You could place your left hand onto the front of the left hip to help remind you to do that. So you're not bringing lots of pressure with the left hand, but just some gentle pressure there might help to keep that left hip drawing down. Keep pushing out through the left foot. If it feels comfortable to you, you could creep the right foot over towards the left thigh a little more, so that the right foot is more in line with the midline or the center line running through the body. Maybe that feels like it offers you a bit more opportunity for the right knee, the right thigh to release down a little more. Keep navel drawing in towards spine so the lower back is still has some contact with the mat. Bring your focus now to your right leg, and in particular visualizing the distance or the space between the right hip and the right knee. You could bring your right hand onto your right thigh if that feels helpful. As you next exhale, can you have a sense of the right knee lengthening away from the right hip? So if you think about that distance from hip to knee being a kind of a diagonal line here, can you increase the length of that line by drawing the knee away from the hip? Keep the left hip drawing down, keep pushing out through the left heel, navel in towards spine. See if you can stay active in all these ways through both legs. Maybe if it feels okay, you could bring hands back alongside you into the mountain pose position. If it feels better to keep the hands on the left hand on the hip, right hand on the thigh, feel free to do that. Last few breaths, see if you can come back to the breath. Either focusing on the breath in its natural state, noticing expansion of the front body on the inhale, softening and release of the front body on the exhale, or if it feels comfortable, you could take a few rounds of breath as we did before, having a sense of expansion across the whole of the front of the heart space on the inhale. And as you exhale, focusing on belly, drawing towards the spine. Okay, on your next inhale, draw your right knee back up, sole of the right foot into the mat. And then you can use another inhale to draw the left knee up so the left sole of the foot is on the mat as well. Just pause here for a moment, observe the breath. Observe the body. Maybe notice how the body feels one side compared to the other. On your next exhale, slide the right foot away from you. Push out through the right heel. Maybe pushing through the ball of the right foot as well. So using that push of the foot to get really active in the right leg. If you can draw navel in towards spine so that the lower back is a little more connected with the mat, and also perhaps you might notice as you do that a sense of the tailbone lengthening away from you a little more as well. Maybe it might be tricky to feel into when lying on the mat, but maybe you notice with that action that there's a little more activation in the right glute as well. Can you have a sense now of the right hip really actively drawing down towards the mat? And as you work in this way, just checking that you're finding that balance between effort and ease. So we're wanting to find ways to harness the amazing strength and stability that our bodies can offer us. But for that to still feel easeful in some way. So it's not that everything is clenched tight here. We're finding ways to lengthen and to activate. Maybe having hands on the front of the right hip might feel helpful with that drawing down of the right hip. On your next exhale, draw your left knee out to the side, come to rest on the outer edge of the left foot. As you do that, keep the right hip drawing down, stay active through the right leg. Make any adjustments to the left foot. So if it feels comfortable to creep the left foot towards the right thigh a little more, then doing that. Then bring your focus to your left thigh and to the distance between the left hip and the left knee. As you exhale, you have a sense of the left knee drawing a little further away from the left hip. Using the breath to help you find that balance between effort and ease as well. So that action of drawing the knee away from the hip, which may not even be a physical movement, but as you tune into that, rather than that feeling like a kind of a purely muscular or physical action, that focusing on that in the exhale can help it feel a little more like a natural release. If you want to have the left hand on the left thigh, you could even move the left hand along the thigh from the top of the thigh along towards the knee a few times to, again, if that feels helpful, to really tune into that sense of the knee lengthening away. Come back to the breath now, either observing the breath, observing expansion of the front body on the inhale, softening and release of the front body on the exhale, or taking a few rounds of breath where you're focusing on expansion in the front of the heart space on the inhale, focusing on belly drawing towards the spine on the exhale. On your next inhale, draw your left knee back up, sole of the left foot to the mat. And then you can use another inhale to rebend the right knee, bring sole of the right foot to the mat. And again, just pause here for a moment, observing the body, observing the breath. Taking your time now to make your way to all fours. So you might roll to one side and push yourself up from there, or you might take a rock and roll along the spine if that's a part of your practice and feels right for you today. Just knowing that we'll meet in all fours. So as you come to all fours, checking that shoulders are directly above the wrists, hips are above the knees, fingers are spread wide. We're going to come into some cat-cow. So as always, if it feels better for your practice today to be seated, then feel free to come to seated. That might be in a chair, might be sitting on heels, or you could take sukhasana. That would be, sukhasana would, in terms of the sort of practice that we're doing today, would be a great one to take, but whatever feels comfortable for you. So the other thing with being on all fours is if that's feeling a bit tough on the wrists, then you could see how it feels to bring fists to the floor. Even if it's that you take a few rounds like this and then come to seated maybe, or perhaps you take a few rounds with palms of the hands on the mat and then come to the fists, you could have a play around with that. So in your own time, ease into your cat-cow. So you don't need to match my rhythm or my narration, but just to offer you some things as you come into your cat-cows. Now, you're matching your movement to your breath. Each time you inhale, shoulders are drawing back, and that's creating space for the chest, the front of the heart space to draw forwards. As you do that, allowing the tailbone naturally to tip up to whatever degree range feels right, feels comfortable. Each time you exhale, there's a sense of really pressing the mat away from you with the hands or the fists, if you've got fists on the mat, and using that press to help you draw the middle of the spine up towards the ceiling. Also seeing if you can draw navel in towards the spine to help with that movement. And from that, that gives you the space to allow the head to release down, the neck to release, and allowing the tailbone to draw down at the same time. So keep going at your own pace. Inhaling, shoulders drawing back, chest drawing forwards. Exhaling, pushing the mat away from you as you draw the middle of the spine up towards the ceiling. If it feels comfortable too, as you continue for a few more rounds of cat-cow, you could come back to the practice of inhaling and finding that sense of expansion, spaciousness across the chest from shoulder point to shoulder point, or maybe it feels more helpful to think about from armpit to armpit. And then as you exhale, drawing the middle of the spine up towards the ceiling, see if you can draw navel in towards the spine. So there's a focus on the belly drawing towards the spine here on the exhale. So same breath practice as we took earlier. Maybe lengthening the inhale and the exhale as you explore that. Okay, coming back to center now. We're going to come into a downward dog for a few breaths. So Be ready to take whatever variation of downward dog feels right for you. I am going to spend a moment or two talking through coming into downward dog on the mat, but no worries if that's not the right option for your practice at this moment. If it's that holding downward dog for more than a breath or two isn't right for you, then maybe join me in coming up into downward dog, and then you can make your way into another variation. So that might be extended child's pose, it might be downward dog at the wall, or any other variation that you're confident in practicing as an alternative to downward dog on the mat. So downward dog on the mat, take your hands a little further forwards now. You could also explore working on this with fists. If you're doing that, then you'd want to have elbow creases facing towards each other. So if you're making fists, then have the elbow creases facing towards each other rather than towards you. Hopefully that's clear. Otherwise, you've got palms of the hands on the mat, fingers spread wide. Find now a real press of the hands into the mat. So with palms of the hands really pressing into that horseshoe shape on the hands, the points at the bottom of each finger and thumb. So really as if you're trying to press the mat away from you. Tuck the toes. Draw navel in towards spine. So in a moment when we lift the hips, there's a sense of it being that press of the hands and navel drawing towards spine that's driving the hips up. On your next inhale, lift the knees slightly and then keep pressing the mat away from you with the hands, navel towards spine as you draw the hips up and back. Keep that press of the hands. Keep navel towards spine as you consciously lengthen the hips away from the wrists. Feel free to come into any other variation of downward dog that feels right for you, or staying in downward dog on the mat whenever you're in. Whichever pose you've chosen, come back to the breath. And if you can come back to that practice of finding expansion in the heart space on the inhale and a sense of belly drawing towards spine on the exhale. Great. If you're in downward dog on the mat, start to walk your hands back towards your feet. Really try and keep that lift in the hips as you do that. So draw navel in towards spine again to help with that lift of the hips until the weight fully consciously comes into the feet. You can let the hands go now. So now, instead of it being the hands that are actively pressing into the mat, it's the feet. So it's the press of the feet into the mat, along with navel in towards spine, that is driving that lift of the hips. And all of that work is creating space for the upper body to soften and release down here. So the side body softening and releasing down, shoulders softening and releasing, neck and head releasing down. Stay with the breath. The press of the feet into the mat. It may feel tricky because pretty much all your weight is coming down through the feet. So it may feel like there's nowhere else to go, like gravity is doing everything that can be done to connect the feet with the mat. So no worries if you can't feel like there's any more action you can bring to the feet, but keep your focus on the feet and see if you can find anything. See if there is any scope anywhere to have a sense of pressing the feet more actively into the mat. So maybe the ball of the foot can press in a little more. Maybe you can have a sense of drawing the heels in a bit more. Maybe the outer edge of the foot can press down a bit more. So there's a general feeling of the feet spreading widthways a bit more. Just explore, see what you can find, so that it's as if the feet are trying to push the ground away, and with that push, the rebound energy of that push helps to lift the hips higher, along with navel towards spine. Last few breaths, maybe lengthening the exhale if that feels good. So on each inhale, focus on that lengthening from the feet all the way up to the hips. On the exhale, focus on the softening and release of the upper body. Okay. On your next inhale, come to a halfway lift. So palms of the hands on the front of the legs, shoulders drawing back, chest drawing forwards. Sit bones are drawing back here. And the press of the hands on the front of the legs, just a gentle press. See if you can notice the relationship between that and being able to maybe draw the shoulders back a little more, so that the chest, the heart space might draw forwards a bit more. At the same time, the sit bones are drawing back towards the wall or the space behind you. Notice how the feet are here. Is the weight coming back more into the heels? Can you press, if that's the case, can you press down through the ball of the foot, find a bit more weight into the front of the foot? Just notice. Come back to the breath. As you inhale, can you find more expansion across and spaciousness across the chest? As you exhale, can you find a sense of belly towards spine? Exhale back down to your forward fold. Bring your hands onto your hips. In a moment, we're going to come all the way up, so don't come up yet, but just have your hands on your hips. And when you do come up, try and have an awareness of moving through that halfway lift that we just took. So now as you inhale, the chest draws forwards and then up, so that you're kind of coming via your halfway lift. Keep pressing into the mat with your feet as you draw yourself all the way up, maybe having a little bit of an awareness of that press of the feet into the mat being part of the strength or the driving force that draws you up. Okay, come to step to the top of your mat and come into your mountain pose. So feet are hip width apart. Tailbone is drawing down. You've got a tilt in the pelvis, so that the glutes are more engaged. Maybe the quads are a bit more engaged. You draw navel in towards spine to support you a little more. And then from all of that work, through the feet, the legs, the glutes, the abdomen, the lower back, all active and engaged here. Can you find some spaciousness in the upper body? So as you inhale, can you find some length in the spine, lift in the chest? As you exhale, can the shoulders draw back and down a little more? Maybe the elbow creases face forwards to help sustain that action of the shoulders drawing back and down. And as the shoulders draw back and down, can you bring a little bit more awareness to the shoulder blades at the back, and awareness of them drawing into the back a bit more, and the relationship between that and the perhaps being a little bit more sense of spaciousness, expansion in the front of the heart space. Come back to the breath, just observing the breath here. If you set an intention at the start of your practice, take a moment to recall that now. Okay. Bring palms of the hands together in front of the heart. See if you can, so you're still actively in your mountain pose. All you've changed is the position of the hands. See if you might be able to press the heels of the hands together a little more. And maybe seeing if that press brings just a little bit more sense of spaciousness across the front of the heart space from shoulder point to shoulder point. Maybe a subtle sense of the shoulders drawing back and down a bit more. Keep the tailbone drawing down. As you inhale, perhaps it feels like the chest might lift just a tiny bit more, as if it's trying to draw towards the thumbs a bit more. As you next inhale, either raise the arms up or bring hands onto the hips. As you exhale, press down through the feet, hinge from the hips, draw the chest forwards and down. So you can sweep the arms down if they're raised. We're coming into your forward fold. Navel towards spine, hips lifting high. On your next inhale, come to your halfway lift. Shoulders draw back, chest draws forwards, sit bones draw back, still pressing down into the feet. As you exhale, fold forwards again. And now bend your knees as much as you need to so that you can bring hands onto the mat in front of the feet. Maybe slightly wider than the feet if you've got the feet hip width apart, which is about 2 fists worth. But more to the point, having the hands as directly underneath the shoulders as you can. So it might be that you can bend the knees, bring palms of the hands to the mat and still have the feet fully planted on the mat. And if that's not available to you, then see if it feels okay, feels safe for the body, then by all means, for the purposes of our practice today, lift the heels so that you can bend down a little more. So you're coming into more of a squat. You might come all the way down into a squat. Might feel easier to sustain so that you can press the hands down into the mat. If you can find a way to have the hands fully pressing into the mat, then do. If any issues with the wrists here, then again, you could see how it feels to use fists. We are going to be practicing stepping back ultimately into downward dog. So if you're using fists, again, have elbow creases facing towards each other. If that's not an option for you, then you can come to fingertips, but just bear in mind we will be stepping back to downward dog. So hands pressing down into the mat. Get active through the hands now. So can you find that sense again that we were exploring earlier of actively pressing the mat away from you with your hands? And as you do that, can that help you to lift the hips a little higher? It might be a small movement or not even a physical movement at all. It might be a bigger one. So see if you can find that relationship between pressing the mat away from you with the hands and lifting the hips a little higher. Can you draw navel in towards spine to help with that lift of the hips? So you've got as much space as you can have here. Now, take an inhale. And then as you exhale, draw the right foot back. And then draw the back knee down. So we're coming into a low lunge here. Come up onto fingertips. Make any adjustments that you need to for your low lunge. So particularly make sure that front foot is firmly rooted. So you might need to creep it forward slightly if it feels like the heel is light on the mat. So you want to be able to press down through the whole of that front foot. Make any other adjustments that you need to your low lunge. So you've got some opening in the back groin, that the back knee feels comfortable. And then see if you can have a sense of pressing the mat away from you with the fingertips. If that can bring a little more lift to the chest, allow the shoulders to draw back a bit more, so the shoulder blades drawing into the back a bit more, bringing a bit more length to the front body. Come back to the breath. As you inhale, can you find a sense of spaciousness and length in the whole of the front body? As you exhale, you have a sense of the pelvis actively drawing towards the mat a bit more. So you're not forcing anything to happen here, but just when you allow on the exhale, that drawing of the pelvis towards the mat. Right. Bring palms of the hands back to the mat. Again, see if you can have them positioned so shoulders are as directly above the wrists as you can. Inhale the back knee up. Press the mat away from you with your hands again. So it almost feels like the arms are lengthening. Draw navel towards spine. As you next inhale, keep that press of the hands. Use that press and use the navel towards spine to start drawing the hips up and back until you've got enough space for the front foot to slide back, join the back foot and come into a downward dog. You can either stay in downward dog or exhale, knees to the mat, draw bum to the heels, forehead to the mat and come to an extended child pose. Come back to the breath. Either observing the breath here, or you could use the inhale to focus on and find expansion in the heart space. So front and back of the heart space now. So back of the heart space being the upper back, particularly that space between the shoulder blades. And then focus on belly towards spine on the exhale. Okay, so we'll prepare to step through with the right foot. So you're either coming to an all fours for that step through or to downward dog. So just to be clear, if you're coming to all fours, then your practice is to take the right foot out to the side and round. You don't need to do it yet, but I'm just talking through for a moment, and then bring it in between the hands so that you'll come into a low lunge. I'll spend a bit more time talking through step through from downward dog. Doesn't mean that you need to be doing it, it's just taking the opportunity to make sure you take whatever practice feels right for you at this point. So if you're coming from downward dog, then as you inhale, lift the right foot and draw the right knee in towards the chest. Push the mat away from you with your hands. Really keep that connection of hands really pressing into the mat. As you next exhale, start to travel forward. Keep the knee in towards the chest, navel towards spine if you can, to bring a bit more rounding to the back as you travel forwards until shoulders are above wrists, and then bring the foot down and then wriggle it into place as you need to. Then you can bring the back knee down. So we're all meeting in low lunge, up on fingertips. If you haven't already, take the time to make any adjustments. Make sure the front foot is firmly rooted. Make sure that there's weight coming down through the heel. Check that the back knee is comfortable. You can place some padding underneath it, and that it's far enough back that you've got some opening in the back groin without it feeling at all overstretched. Press the mat away from you with the fingertips. See if that can allow the shoulders to draw back a little more, bring a bit more lift to the chest. As you inhale, finding length in the whole of the front body. As you exhale, focusing on the pelvis drawing towards the mat. So you're not forcing anything or making anything extra happen, just bringing that focus through the breath. Great. Okay, so bringing palms of the hands back to the mat. Again, if you can have them positioned so that shoulders are directly above the wrists, then great. Or again, you could have fists with the elbow creases facing towards each other. Find that sense of really pressing the mat away from you with the hands, almost like the arms are lengthening as you do that. tuck the back toes, draw navel towards spine, inhale the back knee up, keep that sense of pressing the mat away from you with the hands. So we're pausing here for a moment. As you press the hands into the mat, does it feel like the hips can lift a little more, navel towards spine? Maybe they can lift a little more. Take an inhale, and then as you exhale, step the back foot forward, coming into your forward fold. Pausing here in your forward fold for a few breaths. So focusing as you did before on the action of the feet pressing into the mat, using that press along with navel towards spine to help lift the hips a little higher, so that you can really soften and release through the whole of the upper body on the exhale. So although there is effort going on in the body here to support you to create the space for release, see if you can lengthen the exhale a little more now so that your focus is more on that softening and release. Right. On your next inhale, come to a halfway lift, finding length in the side body, chest drawing forward, sit bones drawing back. Exhale back down to your forward fold. And then as you inhale, hinge from the hips, come up via that halfway lift, drawing the chest forwards and up, either sweeping the arms up or bringing hands to the hips, coming all the way up to standing. Exhale, bring palms of the hands together in front of the heart. Release the arms alongside you, being fully active in your mountain pose. You might close the eyes or soften the gaze if that feels okay. Observe the breath. Observe the body. Bring your focus fully to your feet. Again, seeing if you can find, however subtle, any sense of getting more active through the feet here, any sense of pressing the feet into the mat a little more. If it feels helpful, you might imagine exhaling out through the soles of the feet. Bring your focus more fully to your left foot now. And see if you can press the left foot more actively into the mat. So as you do that, and your center of gravity shifts to the left a little more, so that the right foot feels a little lighter. Maybe it feels like there's a bit more scope now to really get active through that left foot, as if you're trying to push the ground away from you. So if leg feels okay straight here, you can keep it straight. If that's feeling at all uncomfortable for the hip or any other reason, then you could bring a little bit of a bend to the knee. But you want to try and stay as active as you can through the foot. So don't use that bend of the knee to just bring a load of weightiness into the foot. Stay active through the foot. So think about when we were lying on our backs and pushing out through the ball of the foot in order to get the leg active. It's the same thing that we're exploring here. It's just that here we do actually have the ground in the way, and we've got gravity going on to help or complicate matters on depending on how you see it. So really active through that left foot so that the left leg is active. See if the tailbone can draw down a little more, and notice how that activates the glute as well, and also maybe brings a sense of the hip hugging in a bit more here now. So we're getting active all the way from the hip and the glutes all the way along the leg down to the foot. Bring your hands onto your hips, find a point to gaze at a few feet in front of you. And on your next inhale, just raise the right heel so you come up onto your right tiptoes. You might have the ball of the foot still on the mat, or you might be on the very tip of the right toe. Stay active through that left leg So think about how your leg felt active when we were lying on our backs with the extended leg. Try and find that here. Keep the tailbone drawing down to help with the glutes staying active as well. You can either stay here with the toes on the mat, or if it feels okay on your next inhale, raise the right knee up to hip height. Keep pressing down through the left foot. Try and keep your focus on that left foot, that left leg, the standing leg. Just observing, noticing, maybe noticing the wobbles, which are all part of all the amazing muscles in your feet working for you here to help keep you steady. And if you come out of the balance, then that's an opportunity to mindfully come back in. If you've got the knee raised, then bring the right hand onto the knee or onto the thigh if the knee doesn't feel comfortable to reach to. And then wherever you are now, take an inhale, and on your exhale, explore drawing the right knee out to the right. Keep the left hip facing forward. So you could bring your hand onto the front of your left hip to encourage the left hip to stay facing forward. If you've got the foot down, you're still exploring right knee coming out to the right. And it's balance. Be prepared to come in and out. Use any time that you come out as an opportunity to practice coming back in. If you can find some steadiness to a few breaths, then see if you can come back to the practice of finding expansion, spaciousness across the heart space on the inhale, belly towards spine on the exhale. Last few breaths. Maybe just taking the balance one last time. So left hip stays drawing forward. So just as when we were working on the mat, we wanted to keep that left hip drawing down towards the ground. Same principle here. Okay, if you're in the balance, then use an inhale to draw the knee back to center. Exhale to replace the sole of the right foot on the mat. Feel free to have a wiggle of the hips or a shake out of the legs, anything that feels good here. And then come back when you're ready to your mountain pose. You could close the eyes or soften the gaze if that feels okay. And observe the breath, observe the body. Observe the mind too. The ego mind can often be keen to get involved when we work with balance. It likes the challenge. And it can also have a tendency to rise up when we've practiced one side of something and we're waiting to come to the other side. So just noticing, is the mind racing ahead, wanting to kind of do the other side. Observing without judgment, seeing if you can allow those thoughts to drift away, bring the focus back to the breath. Bring your focus to your right foot now. Spend some time seeing if you can really actively engage the right foot into the mat, as if you're trying to push the mat away from you. Again, see how it feels on this side. If you need to bring a slight bend to the knee so that the hip or anywhere else still feels okay, then do that. But really focus on trying to get active through that foot in order for the leg to be active here. See if tailbone can draw down a bit more, so that you're kind of working from one end and the other end of the leg to get the leg really active. Once you're feeling light on the left foot, then use, you can bring hands to hips and find a point to gaze at now if you want to. If you're working with balance and that's feeling absolutely fine and you want to kind of challenge yourself a bit more with balance, you could see how it feels to work with eyes closed. Otherwise, find a point to gaze at, and then when you're ready, inhale, raise the left heel up, either onto the ball of the left foot or onto the tiptoe. Keep pressing down to the right foot. So notice how that will have shifted the hips a little. Can you press down through the right foot a bit more now? So it's almost like that right leg is growing, the hip is drawing up a bit more. And you draw navel in towards spine to support you, tailbone drawing down. And then either keeping the left foot where it is, or inhaling, raising the left foot up so the knee comes to hip height. Again, press down through that right foot. Keep your focus on that foot, on that standing leg. If you've got the knee raised, bring your hand onto the knee or onto the thigh. And then wherever you are, use an exhale to explore drawing the left knee out to the left. You could bring the right hand onto the front of the right hip if that feels helpful, to keep that right hip facing forward. So again, think about that action of when we were lying on the mat and we were wanting the hip to kind of draw round and down. So it's now kind of wanting to draw round and back, if that makes sense. Wish I could draw a little arrow here. Hopefully you're seeing what I mean, or feeling what I mean. Again, be prepared to come in and out. And that might be because of balance, or it might be that you recognize that what's right for your practice is to mindfully come back, take a breath or two, and then come back into the pose. So doing what feels right for you, but see if at some point you can find some stillness or some steadiness for a few breaths, so that you can explore finding expansion across the heart space on the inhale, belly towards spine on the exhale. And remember, there are variations here for you to work with. So it might be that you might work with balance here with the knee at hip height for a bit, and then it might feel good to bring the toes to the mat. So you're still working with balance, but there's perhaps a little less going on for you there, so that you can then come to some steadiness to focus on the breath for a few rounds. Right. Okay, if you're in the pose, then use an inhale to draw the left knee back to center. Exhale to replace the sole of the left foot onto the mat. Again, feel free to just have a little wiggle and a shake out. Come back then to stillness in your mountain pose for a moment, so that you can just take a moment to observe the breath, observe the body. Okay, and now making your way down onto the mat, onto your back, we're coming towards Shavasana. So grab anything that you need for your Shavasana. And once you come onto the mat, then hug your knees into your chest. Taking a moment here, you can either keep knees hugging into the chest and be in stillness here, or you could take a rock from side to side. If it's part of your practice, you could even take a moment here to take a gentle twist to each side. So we won't take it as part of the session, just due to time constraints. But if you're watching this on recorded, you could pause for a moment and take a twist by drawing the knees over to one side, pausing there for 2 or 3 breaths, drawing the knees back to center, and then drawing the knees over to the other side. So if that's a familiar practice to you, then you could take that now. And now exhaling, soles of the feet to the mat, make your way into your Shavasana. Grabbing any extra layers or anything to cover your eyes. Come into a position where you feel supported by the ground. Make any adjustments that you need to. Taking some time now in your Shavasana to observe the breath without bringing any control over the breath, just observing, using the observation of each inhale to notice movement and expansion in the front body. So you're not bringing any control over that, you're just observing. Using each exhale to notice the natural softening and release of the front body into the back body, maybe a sense of the back body softening and releasing towards the mat. Starting to take some deeper breaths into the body. Slowly bringing some movement back to the body, maybe wriggling fingers and toes, perhaps rotating wrists and ankles. Taking any movements now, any stretches, sighs, yawns, anything that feels good as you bring your full awareness back to your body. Taking your time to make your way back up to a comfortable seated position, having your eyes closed or your gaze soft as you do that. If you set an intention at the start of your practice, take a moment to recall that now. Bringing palms of the hands together in front of the heart. Taking a moment to be grateful to yourself for making the time for this practice today. And a moment for us to be grateful that we have this practice of yoga available to us, and that we have this means of connection so that we can gather and practice together in this way. If you want to, you could take a moment to think of anything else that you're grateful for right now. Bowing your head towards your fingertips. Namaste. Releasing whenever you're ready. Thank you so much. Lovely to practice with you.